My pulse still spikes every time my mind drags me back to that night. The night everything I'd built, everything I'd poured myself into, was left in ruins. I stood in the shattered wreckage of my workshop, the air thick with sawdust that clung to my boots, staring at the splintered remains of my craft. 10 years of sweat, sacrifice, and sleepless nights lay torn apart. They thought they could take it away from me, my home, my livelihood, my sanctuary. They thought they could strip me bare and leave me broken. They were wrong. Before we dive into this story, do me a favor. Subscribe for more powerful true life stories like this one, and drop your city or hometown in the comments. I want to know where you're watching from. Now let's dive in. My name is Ethan Parker. I'm 36 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've been chasing one thing. Not money, not fame, but space. A space where I could create. A place where I could carve my soul into wood. A corner of the world where sawdust wasn't a mess, but magic. As a kid, while other kids were glued to game consoles, I was out in my father's garage with scraps of oak and a dull sander, shaping pieces no bigger than my hand and pretending they were heirlooms. My mom always said it was a strange fixation. What she didn't understand was that it wasn't a hobby. It was oxygen. By 21, while my peers chased degrees in finance, law, and medicine, I was studying carpentry. My father called it a fool's path. Stable careers don't involve chisels and glue, son. But I ignored him. Stability meant nothing to me if I couldn't breathe. At 26, I was stuck in cheap furniture shops, working for men who cared about nothing but speed. Their so-called craftsmanship was plywood, rushed varnish, nails bent in haste. Every shift felt like betrayal to the art. Eventually, I snapped. I quit. I gambled every penny I had on a dream, my own studio. I called it Ironwood Designs. The first year nearly killed me. My alarm rang at 4 a.m. I'd haul lumber in a van that rattled with every bump, my hands raw and cracked, fingertips permanently stained with varnish. I'd collapse onto my thin mattress after midnight and wonder if I'd bet on the wrong dream. But then a client would run their hand across a table I made, their eyes shining with awe, and for a fleeting moment, I'd know. This was worth it. By 32, I'd made it to stable ground. My client list was growing, my reputation spreading, and I finally had enough saved for something that felt impossible for years, a home of my own. Not just any home. A small, forgotten loft in a quiet coastal town. Peeling paint, creaking floorboards, a rooftop that looked like it hadn't seen care in decades. To most, it was trash. To me, it was a blank canvas. I signed the deed with hands that shook like I was holding lightning. That loft wasn't just walls and a roof. It was an oath. Proof that everything I had bled for hadn't been in vain. I worked on it for years. By day, I was buried in commissions. By night, I was on that rooftop, sweat stinging my eyes as I hauled tiles, planted wildflowers, and built a pergola that framed the stars. Piece by piece, I turned that forgotten rooftop into a garden of wood and light. Last spring, a design blog featured it, Urban Oasis of the Year. My name in print. My pictures online. Strangers celebrating what I had built. I nearly cried staring at the article. But nothing compared to the moment, just last month, when I wired my final mortgage payment. 10 years of instant coffee, patched up jeans, and weekends lost to labor, all worth it. I stood in my workshop, holding the title deed, whispering to myself, I made it. I thought my family would share that victory with me. I only had one sibling left in my life. Aaron, my older brother, 40 years old, father to two sweet girls, Lily and Grace. They were my world. I'd babysit, let them run wild in my workshop, their giggles bouncing off the walls. Aaron struggled constantly, low-paying jobs, late bills, an endless storm. I helped when I could, paid their utilities more than once, covered rent when eviction loomed. Aaron never said thank you, just muttered that I was lucky. I ignored his sharp tone. I believed blood was blood. So when I finally paid off my loft, I wanted to share it. I baked a tart, grabbed a bottle of bourbon I'd been saving, and headed to my parents' house. I pictured their faces glowing with pride, Aaron raising his glass to me, my nieces hugging me tight. But what I walked into wasn't celebration. It was betrayal. Dinner was heavy. Aaron whined about his landlord, how his girls didn't have enough space, how life wasn't fair. My parents nodded, pity softening their eyes. When I finally rose to share my news, My voice trembling with pride. Silence fell like a stone. I paid off my loft. It's mine. Completely. Silence. My mom muttered. That's great, Ethan. Her eyes glued to her plate. My father coughed, uninterested. And Aaron? He didn't even look up. He just kept chewing. Then, finally, he set his fork down, looked me dead in the eye, and said, That loft should be for family. We're moving in. I thought he was joking. I laughed, bitter, raw, but his expression didn't crack. You don't need all that space, Ethan. Lily and Grace do. You'll figure something out. You always do. My parents nodded along. He's got a point, Dad said. Think of the girls. It felt like a knife between my ribs. My own parents, siding with him. My life's work, dismissed as optional, disposable, replaceable. I slammed my hand against the table, the bourbon bottle rattling. This is my home. My blood, my sweat, my sacrifice. You don't get to touch it. They stared at me like I was the selfish one. I grabbed my tart and stormed out, their voices chasing me down the driveway. He'll come around. He's just stubborn, my mom whispered. That night, the phone lit up. My mother pleading, my father lecturing, cousins guilt tripping. Family first, Ethan. Think of the children, Ethan. I deleted them all, my hands shaking. Then came the day that burned into my memory like fire. I woke to the rumble of a truck. I stepped onto my rooftop, boots crunching gravel, and froze. A moving van was in my driveway. Aaron stood in front of it like a king, barking orders at movers. My nieces clutched their dolls, wide-eyed. Boxes piled high on my steps. We're moving in, Aaron said, calm, smug. You wouldn't throw your nieces out, would you? My blood turned to ice. He'd already canceled his lease. He thought he had me cornered, but he underestimated me. I turned to the movers, my voice steel. You're trespassing. Leave now, or I'm calling the cops. Aaron's jaw tightened, but the movers didn't wait. They reloaded the truck and drove off. Aaron kicked my gate, shouting curses, calling me heartless as his daughters sobbed. But I didn't bend. I thought it was over. I was wrong. A week later, I returned to devastation. My workshop ransacked. Shelves overturned. Tools smashed. My rooftop, wildflowers trampled, tiles shattered, pergola splintered. And worst of all, the table I'd spent 3 months perfecting, split clean in half by a sledgehammer. I checked my cameras. The footage was clear as day. Aaron, smiling, swinging the hammer. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I acted. I drove to my parents' house, played the footage on their TV, and watched their faces pale. My voice didn't shake. You will pay me $6,000 for the damages, or I press charges. And this footage goes online. They paid. Begrudgingly. Bitterly. And then they cut me off. I rebuilt. Stronger. Better. My rooftop blooms again. My workshop hums with life. And me? I'm free. Aaron chose greed over blood. My parents chose silence over justice. But I chose myself. If you've ever had to fight for what was yours, if you've ever stood your ground when the world told you to fold, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this one. They're raw, they're real, and they're mine.